Hi guys, it's Michelle, and today's video is going to be all about different celebrity deaths that didn't add up. We're going to be talking about the Illuminati, different conspiracy theories surrounding celebrities who have passed away in sort of a mysterious manner, and we're just going to deep dive into some of the most interesting, in my opinion, celebrity deaths that have occurred over the years. So without further ado, let's get into it. We're going to start off with Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson is one of those celebrities who probably has the most conspiracy theories surrounding his death that I've maybe ever heard. People in his own family not believing what was told to the media. Let's just dive in. On June 25th of 2009, Michael Jackson died of an acute propofol intoxication in his home in Los Angeles, California. Michael Jackson was only 50 years old at the time, and his personal physician, Conrad Murray, claimed that he found Michael in his room at his North Carolwood Drive home, not breathing and with a weak pulse. Dr. Conrad Murray administered CPR and called 911, and the paramedics attempted to revive him as well, but ultimately he was pronounced dead at the Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center in Westwood, California. So the Los Angeles coroner actually declared pretty early on that Michael Jackson's death was a homicide. It was clear to a lot of people that Dr. Conrad Murray, there were some miscalculations, whether it was intentional or not, everyone is unsure of, but there was definitely some miscalculations with his medication that he was prescribing Michael. Basically, Conrad Murray had administered Michael Jackson an anesthetic as a sleeping medication, which is absolutely unheard of. Like, many healthcare professionals are just like dumbfounded by the fact that he even did this because it's so dangerous, and pretty much no one is surprised that this combination of that and the anti-anxiety that Dr. Conrad Murray was prescribing Michael killed him. It just makes a lot of sense, and any doctor should theoretically know that. But according to Conrad Murray, he was trying to help Michael Jackson because he suffered with severe insomnia. He used this sedative as a sleep aid, basically would monitor him bedside to make sure that he was okay. But apparently he went to the bathroom for 2 minutes, and when he came back, that's when he noticed that Michael was no longer breathing and had a weak pulse. Ultimately, Dr. Conrad Murray was convicted of involuntary manslaughter, and he was sentenced to 4 years in prison, but only served 2. He got out early on good behavior. That was when a lot of people began to question if Michael Jackson's death was a little bit more intentional than Dr. Conrad Murray had led on previously. The family of Michael Jackson never believed, and still to this day do not believe, Michael Jackson's death was an accident. Michael's sister LaToya Jackson was the one who was very vocal about her conspiracy theories as to what happened to her brother. She full-heartedly believed her brother was maliciously murdered and that Conrad Murray was kind of just a cover-up. So right before Michael's death, he was actually rehearsing on and on this tour, the This Is It tour. This was going to be one of the biggest tours of all time. The company that was promoting it and sponsoring it was a company named AEG Live. Now, LaToya herself really claims that AEG Live had a lot more to do with Michael's death than that they were leading on. She claimed that Michael himself told her that Michael was fearing for his life every day, and that Michael told LaToya shortly before his death that he was going to be murdered for his music publishing catalog and his estate.
That Michael constantly told me, LaToya, if I die, they're going to murder me, they're going to kill me. He would tell me that, Barbara, and that's when Michael passed. When I found out he had actually passed, I said, no, it wasn't an accident. He was murdered.
Your brother was murdered.
I always believed that from day one.
And according to LaToya, his children also knew that Michael was in trouble, and they were very, very nervous, and they just knew something was off. There's like telephone recordings of Michael talking on the phone saying that he was scared for his life. It's all just very suspicious.
I don't know if I should tell you this, but I don't know who may be listening. There may be a group of people that want to get rid of me. They don't want me here anymore. I can't talk about it over the phone. I don't know what's going to happen, but I just feel in my soul, only God knows, they could shoot me. They could stab me. They could frame me and say I overdosed on drugs. They can do a lot of things that the government is more than the government. But I don't know today. I don't care. They can do I don't even care about my life anymore. I just want my children to be okay.
Paris Jackson, his daughter, even claims that she 100% believes that Michael was murdered. Toya Jackson apparently found notes scattered throughout Michael's bedroom that said, "Get me away from these people," referring to likely AEG Live.
Conrad Murray is simply the fall guy. This was definitely something that was premeditated, that they had planned to do, and they planned to take my brother out, and my brother knew it, and that's why he told me repeatedly and repeatedly and repeatedly that this was going to happen to him. He explained it to me. He explained it's because of my catalog, which is my publishing, and they're after it, and they want it, and they want their hands on it, and they want to take it away from me. Michael had notes in his house saying how he hates John Branca. He hates Randy Phillips. He doesn't want them around. He'll never fly with them. He just went on and on expressing how he felt about these people. These people were all involved. Mind you, the will, I truly believe, and I know that the will is fake. Because Michael was in New York when the will was signed, and they say he signed it in L.A., and he did not. And they know this. But yet they put themselves as the executors on this estate. There was another guy that was in the will, Barry Siegel. But he pleasantly removed himself from it. Why would he do that? Because he knew that it was fake and he wasn't going to get involved in the skullduggery.
Essentially, they were really working Michael to the bone, which was affecting all of his sleep scheduling and just in general, which maybe led to Conrad Murray prescribing the anesthetic. Joseph Jackson, Michael's father, actually filed a complaint with the California Medical Board alleging that AEG Live was illegally practicing medicine, demanding that Dr. Conrad Murray get Michael off of various medications, as well as AEG Live failed to provide the resuscitation equipment and the nurse that Dr. Murray requested the day that Michael died. So overall, there was just a lot of suspicious things regarding Michael's death and the days leading up to it, really. And again, most of the Jackson family believed Conrad Murray was sort of just a fall guy for the death of Michael Jackson and that he was actually being controlled by higher up people. And a lot of them point fingers at AEG Live. And I think Michael himself was pointing fingers at different record labels. He was always really speaking out against the Illuminati, sort of. He wouldn't ever say it in those specific words, but he was speaking out against the industry a lot. He was very vocal about it. And he was really ruffling the feathers of the music industry, and this definitely bothered them. We think that that would be a motive to kill him. I don't know, but I think one very big motive would be the fact that Michael Jackson has since, from his death, made $2 billion. Insane. That just gives a perfect motive for all of these labels and record companies. They're probably making way more money off his death than if he were still alive to this day, because who knows if he would even be continuing to make music. So do I think that Michael Jackson was murdered by the Illuminati? If there is an Illuminati, yes. If there's not, and it's just the record labels and the companies and all of the higher ups, then still, yeah. The Illuminati is maybe not so much a secret society as it is just the people who run the show in Hollywood and in the media and political aspects, literally everything. Every source of the government, all of these people with so much power, they're obviously higher up than the celebrities themselves and they have more pull and more power. Do I think that they kill people who disagree with them or / will make them more money post their death? I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense, but what do you guys think? I just think whenever there's a situation that a doctor, a medical professional, inaccurately prescribing medication to someone famous, even with Elvis Presley, this has happened so many different times, I will always think that it is suspicious. They're obviously doctors, they know better, and they know their sole goal should be to keep their patients alive. And I just think it's very strange, and I think doctors are still humans, and I think there are still bad ones, and they could be definitely paid off. Imagine if Conrad Murray had been paid by these record labels like AEG Live or whatever to kill Michael Jackson. All he had to do was serve 2 years in jail, and he could have been set for the rest of his life, never had to work again, because they paid him. I don't know. Morality goes out the window when it comes to money, and that is such a scary concept, but it's so true. I would like to hear what you guys think on this, because I don't know, it scares me. This has always scared me one of the most out of all of the celebrities who have died, because I feel there are so many signs that just point straight to the Illuminati with this one, and I don't know. Alright, the next celebrity death that I want to talk about has been bothering me for the past year and a half, and it is the death of Bob Saget. On January 9th of 2022, comedian and star of Full House Bob Saget was found dead in his hotel room in the Ritz-Carlton, Orlando, Florida. It was ruled that Bob had died from head trauma and had a fracture to his skull and bleeding around his brain. And it's also important to note that Bob had no illegal drugs or toxins in his body, which a lot of people prior to the autopsy had assumed that his death was drug related, just because like when someone relatively young randomly dies, it's just usually points to drugs. So of course there was an investigation of the hotel room, and honestly it didn't offer any conclusive results on what Bob could have hit his head on. Most of the hotel room was carpeted, the headboard was lightly padded, and no skin lacerations were found anywhere, like on any sharp surfaces, to indicate that he had fallen. According to Dr. Gavin Britz, the chair of neurosurgery in Houston, Texas, the trauma to Bob Saget's skull was so significant that he found it similar to someone who was bludgeoned in the head with a baseball bat, or someone who had fallen from 20 to 30 feet. Such a severe head injury would have probably left Bob confused or completely knocked unconscious. However, the death completely still remains a mystery because there was, quote, no evidence of a struggle or any type of foul play, and he was found alone in the hotel room. It was also confusing because he was found lying in his bed, partially clothed with the covers up. But obviously having his cause of death being like head trauma that's consistent with falling from an upper story building or a severe car crash, or again getting literally bludgeoned in the head with a baseball bat. The fact that he was like able to get into bed and like go to sleep that night is kind of nuts, and a lot of people don't think adds up. Also, Bob Saget was at a gig the night prior. He was performing, and then he even stayed out at the club that night, and he even tweeted from his hotel room as well. Authorities still to this day have not released all of the details, which I think is probably for a reason. I mean, obviously it always is, but I think that there is something darker going on with Bob Saget's death. I've always felt like it since it happened. I just thought it was so strange and so out of the blue that I just didn't think it made sense. Like, really, no one knows what he could have hit his head on in the hotel room, and even if he hit his head somewhere else, doctors think it would have been pretty much impossible for him to have made it consciously back to his hotel room perfectly fine. Like, there's no way. It was so bad to the point where coroners don't even find it likely that he like slipped in the shower or something and then got into bed, because they think that the injuries that he sustained from this blunt force trauma were way too severe for him to have just like gotten up and walked into bed. There's just no way. So there's pretty much two theories that I've seen floating around as to what could have happened to Bob Saget. The first being an accidental fall. Like I said, there are a lot of theories that people believe that he fell in the shower and then hit his head. He felt discombobulated, so he went to lay down and then died in his sleep. This is probably the most popular theory, which I'm not really sure why, because according to autopsy specialists and several different coroners and doctors, they believe that this theory would be highly unlikely. Like I said, the severity of Bob's head trauma was way too much that he would not have been able to like get himself out of the shower, get himself dressed, and like put himself to bed. There's just like essentially no way. So that leaves us with one other theory about what happened to Bob Saget, and that could be that there was foul play involved. So a lot of people believe that it's possible that Bob Saget was murdered by an intruder. The room next to Bob's room had a like you know how hotels have an adjoining door. That door to the other room was unlocked, so people think that maybe an intruder came in and bludgeoned Bob Saget to death. But you might be thinking, like, who would want to kill Bob Saget? Like, I feel like it's kind of random. He's just like Danny Tanner, who's killing him. And there's actually kind of a lot of theories. He's a late night kind of guy. Like, he's a comedian at the end of the day and partying with comedians, and I don't know, you know the phrase, nothing good happens after midnight? It's kind of true, and I feel like he was just definitely could have been mixing with some of the wrong people. People think that maybe even an angry fan that went to his comedy show, he like said something that offended them and they went and killed him. Also, a lot of people think that the Illuminati might have a play in this. Obviously, Bob Saget was a pretty famous guy, and a lot of people think that maybe he was just another victim of the Illuminati. I do not know. That's the thing that I don't get, is like, if it's not the Illuminati slash government slash whatever you want to think the Illuminati is, some higher up people, like if it was just a crazed fan, like someone involved like with like a bad, like a just like seedy crowd, like not a good vibe, why wouldn't there be more details about his death. It seems like a lot of things are kept under wraps with these situations, and I think that's what makes them so suspicious. I don't know how his family isn't like pressing for more answers, especially after hearing that doctors think that like slipping and falling and then dying in his bed was impossible, but that's also so scary if that did happen. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts and theories on this. It's definitely something I've wanted to talk about the death of Bob Saget for a while, like quite literally since it happened. I grew up watching Full House, so it was definitely like a shocking celebrity death for me, but like I just always thought something about it feels really, really off, and I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on it. So let me know. All right, the next celebrity deaths we're going to be talking about is the death of Anna Nicole Smith and her son, Daniel Wayne Smith. So Anna Nicole Smith was very famous for her modeling career, but mostly famous for her career as modeling for Playboy. She went on to have a reality show on E! Called The Anna Nicole Show that followed her personal life and also was showing her son a lot, Daniel Wayne Smith. So on September 7th of 2006, Anna Nicole Smith gave birth to her daughter, Dani Lynn, in the Bahamas. And on September 10th of 2006, while Daniel Wayne Smith was visiting his mom and his new sister in the hospital, he was found dead from overdosing in his mother's hospital room, and sadly, Anna Nicole was the one who found him. Autopsy revealed that he died of a combination of drugs including methadone and antidepressants. His death really wasn't so simple because he was only 20 years old at the time and it was considered unnatural. The Bahamas jury requested to do independent toxicology results, discovered that the cause of death was an interaction between methadone and the antidepressants Zoloft and Lexapro. Anna Nicole Smith was incredibly distraught over her son's death. Many people believe that the death of her son is what contributed to her own death on February 8th of 2007 when Anna Nicole Smith passed away in Hollywood, Florida from an accidental drug overdose. Many people thought it was strange how closely together that Anna and Daniel had died. There were many theories that could potentially be foul play involved. Anna Nicole Smith's mother, Virgie Arthur, was one of the first to have many questions surrounding her grandson and her daughter's death. She claimed that after her grandson Daniel died, she told Anna she needed to be very careful because something just didn't seem right. A 20-year-old who was not known for doing drugs, like he never did drugs, he was prescribed these antidepressants, didn't seem right to her that he had died. She felt like someone was out to get her family. Not to mention that when Daniel Wayne Smith died, he had enough drugs in his system to have killed 10 people. It was an absurd amount of drugs. And for someone who didn't really do drugs, allegedly, like I don't know if his grandma is just assuming that he didn't do drugs, but it really wasn't in the media prior to this. That's just a very insane amount of drugs to be dealing with. And then, like I said, just a few months later, his mother, Anna Nicole Smith, passes away in similar manner. It was very suspicious. Pretty much immediately after Anna Nicole Smith's death, a custody battle over a 4-month-old Dani Lynn commenced because she was now the sole heir to Anna Nicole's estate. Prior to Anna Nicole Smith's death, she was in a legal battle with her billionaire late husband, Howard Marshall's family. He had passed away in 1995. Anna Nicole Smith claimed that he wanted to leave her all of his fortune, but she was getting in a legal battle with his children. Therefore, since now Anna Nicole Smith is dead and now her son is dead as well, this 4-month-old Dani Lynn was the sole heir to not only Anna Nicole Smith's current estate, but all of the potential money that she could have gotten from the estate of Howard Marshall. While Anna Nicole Smith was fighting for her husband's estate, she met this lawyer, Howard K. Stern. So Howard K. Stern was the one who was really helping fight for Anna Nicole Smith to receive the estate of Howard Marshall. So Howard Stern and Anna Nicole Smith kind of had a bit of a relationship, basically said that he was Dani Lynn's father. When Dani Lynn was born, Howard Stern was the one who was on the birth certificate in the Bahamas as her father. However, after Anna Nicole's death, an entertainment photographer, Larry Burkhead, stepped forward, claiming that he believed that he was the father of Dani Lynn, and after a DNA test, that was proved to be true. He received full custody of Dani Lynn and has raised her ever since, and in 2014, 7 years after Anna Nicole Smith's death, the estate failed as its final attempt to obtain her late husband's money, and Dani Lynn ended up inheriting nothing from Howard Marshall's estate. The man who was literally the lawyer to Anna Nicole Smith in this case to get this money to Anna Nicole and her family from Howard Marshall's estate. I just find it to be interesting that he thought he was the father of this child. The only way for him to receive any of that estate money is if Anna Nicole and Daniel were both dead, assuming that he was the father at the time. I'm sure he didn't know that there's someone else in the picture. But assuming he was the father of Danny Lynn at the time, it would have been the only way that if Danny Lynn had inherited the money herself, that he would have gotten any part of it, because she was quite literally a baby at the time. She still is only 17 years old. So many people believe that Howard Stern murdered both Anna Nicole and Daniel in order to obtain the estate money that he had been fighting for the last 10 years. And there's actually low-key a little bit of proof to this theory. After Anna Nicole Smith's death, an investigation went through and they found that the drugs that were in her system at the time of her death were prescribed to none other than her lawyer boyfriend, Howard Stern. Now, of course, Anna Nicole Smith was a drug addict. Like, that's not necessarily his fault, I don't think. I don't know if he was the one who introduced her to drugs or whatnot. I just think it's pretty fucked up of him to be giving an addict drugs that ultimately killed her. As for Daniel, it's kind of unclear where he got his drugs from. He was prescribed the Zoloft from a physician. No one is sure exactly how he got the Lexapro and the methadone, and many people have been pointing fingers at Howard Stern. I mean, I just think that it's no coincidence that in order for him to get the money that he was fighting for, he would have to have Anna Nicole and Daniel dead, and they both were. He was actually charged for giving these drugs to Anna Nicole Smith that ultimately killed her, but the charges ended up getting dropped. It was kind of a mess. Although Danny Lynn never received any money from Howard Marshall's estate, I do think that it's still interesting that the man who was doing all of the legal work to get Anna Nicole that money also was the one who provided her with the drugs that killed her. I think it's suspicious, but let me know what you guys think. Something about it is definitely off. Alright, the next celebrity death we're going to be talking about is John Lennon. So on the evening of December 8th, 1980, the famous singer John Lennon from the Beatles was shot and killed in the archway of the Dakota, his apartment building in New York City. He was murdered by a man named Mark David Chapman, who basically claimed to be a fan of the Beatles, and he was saying that he didn't like John Lennon because he was rich. So Mark David Chapman had planned the killing over several months, and he waited outside of John Lennon's apartment. Early that evening, he actually met John Lennon, and he had John Lennon sign his copy of the Double Fantasy album, and he claimed that John Lennon was actually very sweet and kind to him, which is obviously ironic, because later that night, when John and his wife Yoko Ono returned home to the Dakota, Mark was still waiting at the entrance, and he fired 5 bullets, 4 of which hit John Lennon in the back, and he was rushed to the hospital, pronounced dead upon arrival. So what seems like a closed case, like we know who did it kind of situation, a lot of people and conspiracy theorists believe that this is way more than just a crazed fan, and I have to agree. So many people from the beginning, and even still to this day, have been pointing fingers to the Illuminati / the US government. So John Lennon, to calmly put it, was not the US government's favorite person. They really did not want him in America. John Lennon was obviously a high-profile celebrity with a ton of influence, and this is all before social media, so you have to take that into account. It's kind of ridiculous how much influence the Beatles had, and he was constantly campaigning against the Vietnam War, trying to spread peace and the whole peace movement, that the president at the time, Richard Nixon, really did not want him to be in this country anymore, feeding this anti-war narrative to the youth. To the point where Richard Nixon felt so threatened by John Lennon, he literally tried to get him deported several times, all because John Lennon posed a threat against the Republican Party. He influenced so many young Americans to vote in a democratic, like, anti-war way that it really did affect the way that the world was, like, moving towards at that time, I think. Although these deportation attempts were never truly successful, many people believe that the US government / the Illuminati had John Lennon murdered to avoid him spreading the anti-war narrative to the American youth. I think that this makes so much sense, like, to the point where it might be one of my most believed conspiracy theories. Like, I just 100% believe it. It's so clear, like, how badly the US government wanted him out of the country because of how much anti-war propaganda he was spreading. It was affecting the way that people were voting, which is crazy and, like, really cool if you think about it, because, like, even now celebrities do have a lot of influence, but, like, this was all before social media, so that's, like, crazy to me that he had so much influence that happened. I just really believe this theory, and I think it makes complete sense why the Illuminati / government / whatever you want to call it could have had something to do with this. All right, the last celebrity that we're going to be talking about is probably one of the most famous people, in my opinion, whose death points to the Illuminati/government, and that is Marilyn Monroe. So around 3 a.m. on August 5th of 1962, Marilyn Monroe's housekeeper apparently awoke with an uneasy feeling, and she saw that there was a light on in Marilyn's bedroom. When she knocked on the door, there was no answer and the door was locked. Her housekeeper ended up calling Marilyn's psychiatrist, Dr. Greenson, who arrived and broke into the room, finding Marilyn dead in her bed at 3:50 a.m. So then Dr. Engelberg, Marilyn's personal physician, arrived at the home and declared Marilyn dead. Then police were finally called. It's very strange to me how long it took for police to get called. At 4:25 a.m., the LAPD arrived after receiving a call from Dr. Engelberg stating that Marilyn Monroe has committed suicide. Her official cause of death was a probable suicide due to the autopsy suggesting that Marilyn had ingested an inordinately large amount of barbiturates, possibly as many as 50 pills. However, the entire timeline of the night that Marilyn died was completely fudged. The story from Marilyn's PR manager's wife, Arthur Jacobs, was very significant to the discrepancies in the timeline. Essentially, Arthur Jacobs and his wife were at the Hollywood Bowl around 10:30 p.m. when an attendant alerted Arthur that there was something terribly wrong and they needed to be at Marilyn's house immediately. Obviously, much earlier than the 3:30 a.m. timeline of this discovery of Marilyn's body. Also, a lot of speculation and suggestion. Members of the ambulance team the night that Marilyn died said that Marilyn had been taken to the hospital the night of August 4th still alive, yet apparently died en route to the hospital, and then the ambulance workers were told to bring her back to her home and never speak of it. Obviously, we know Marilyn Monroe had quite the involvement with the Kennedy brothers, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but Bobby Kennedy was in fact in Los Angeles the night of Marilyn's death. It's confirmed that Bobby Kennedy flew to the airport in a helicopter to catch a flight around 2 to 3 a.m. the night that Marilyn Monroe died. So Marilyn was first introduced to JFK in 1954, and it's of course famously alleged that they had an affair. But apparently in the spring of 1962, Marilyn actually began an affair with JFK's brother, Bobby Kennedy. There's a lot of theories as to why people believe the Kennedy brothers had involvement in Marilyn's death. Let's go into those theories. For one, it's heavily theorized that Marilyn just simply knew too much. There's a lot of theories about like aliens or other knowledge about different military weapons or plans Kennedy's told her that she should not have known about. That would be a reason that she would be killed by the Illuminati/government. She apparently made a phone call to her hairdresser, Sydney, the night that she died at 9:30 p.m., saying that she was surrounded by danger because she betrayed men in high places. She also allegedly told her hairdresser that Robert Kennedy had been at Marilyn's house that day, threatening her and yelling at her, even though earlier he had promised to marry her and he was now going back on that promise and wanted to end the relationship. Marilyn said that she responded to Bobby Kennedy trying to break up with her by saying that she would go public and hold a tell-all press event to tell not only besides the fact that they were like hooking up in secret, also about secrets about what has gone on in Washington. And then when her hairdresser asked her what sort of secrets were going on in Washington, like what was she referring to, she responded with dangerous ones and then hung up. Apparently Marilyn's house was also completely bugged, and there is a tape allegedly where you can hear Marilyn and Bobby Kennedy fighting. Bobby was screaming, "Where is it? Where the fuck is it?" And most people believe that this was alluding to one of Marilyn's diaries where she potentially wrote down very sensitive information about the Kennedy family and the US government in general. According to an FBI agent, the Kennedys / the US government in general were on the scene immediately after Marilyn had died to erase certain phone records between Bobby and Jack Kennedy. I don't know, I guess we'll never really know what's true on this. It makes so much sense for Marilyn Monroe to have been killed by the Illuminati / US government / whatever you want to call it. She obviously knew too much. I mean, she was in a relationship with both Kennedy brothers. She was obviously getting the tea. I think that the timeline being so inconsistent on the day of her death is very suspicious. Let me know what you guys think. Anyway, that is it for today's video. If you guys liked it, please give it a big thumbs up. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think about these celebrity deaths. That is it. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, and subscribe for new videos every week, and I will see you guys later. Bye!